There, sir. All right. Well, welcome this morning. Thanks for coming out, and excited to have our new coaches panel up here. We've got Eric Klein from St. Charles here, and Eric's our current president right now, and just a phenomenal coach, state Class A true state coach of the year. We've got Megan Orgeman here. She's our AA coach of the year, and she's the Alexandria coach. And then we've got Rob Graham up here, who's the Egan coach, and I think you're our upcoming president, right? So
It's true.
Megan's the outgoing president, you're the incoming president?
That's
All right.
true.
And there's not a ton of questions, so please just feel free to ask away and have some casual conversation with the very, very intelligent people, great coaches, super great humans, and so ask away.
We're also really good talkers, so even if we just need to talk, we can talk.
We can start, like, some of you were at that new coach breakfast on Friday morning, and so there was really only two questions that got submitted. For the life of me, I can't remember what one of them was, but I can get a start on the first one and then look at what the second one was. One of the people submitted and asked, how do you help a student who is stuck in their own head? So I would turn to you guys and ask you what your thoughts are on that, so I can look up the second question while I
Hey, Eric, the other one was what's something I should focus on in my first few years to become a better coach?
Okay, cool. Well, do you want to start with that, or do you want to start with stuck in your own head? They're all good
I could
questions.
jump in on any one.
I don't love that general bucket of stuck in my head, because who knows for sure what that means, but I get it, and usually, well, I coach girls, and so we would start kind of peeling back the layers on it, but we'd start with what went well, because generally how did the race go, something like that, and then it would just, I would get the laundry list of all the things that went wrong, and just stop that for a moment, and then just start kind of talking about, because there's quite a laundry list of things that went really well, or if not an A level, it was a B level of some sort, pretty decent, and then some of the things that maybe didn't go well is we haven't worked on them yet because it's early season, so I found that useful to just sort of kind of start making sure that they felt good about what went wrong, or what went well, and then a lot of times right after the competition, they're judging off of their best day last season or something, so kind of something along those lines is helpful.
One thing, so I coach girls too, I'm the head girls coach, and I also, fun fact, during COVID when everybody was lost, I got a master's degree in sports psych, and so I love just kind of using different things that I learned in creative ways to help kids. And one of the things I learned, this is not mine, but is to change your state. And so if a kid is stuck in their head, there's a lot of ways that you want to change their physiological state. And so if they're stuck here, there's a lot of things you can do to like jolt their nervous system so that they get out of their head. Because sometimes the self-talk or the redirection isn't enough, or it doesn't work, or they just get stuck. So for example, some kids wear a rubber band around their wrist and they will slap themselves, they say. So they'll snap their wrist, which as hard as they can, so that it really, one is a reminder to catch the negative thought patterns, like every time they have a negative thought pattern, they slap it, but also it changes your state. Another thing you'll see is, I don't know if you've ever seen me do this when you watch me coach, but the kid is stuck in their head, I will either like jokingly wrestle with them, or like give them a push or shake them, and it is one to make them laugh, but I'm also really trying to change their state. Like it's why sprinters slap their legs, they're changing their state. It's why people will hit a power pose in the back or slap themselves across the face, they're trying to or jump up and down, they're trying to change their state. So I'll use that to help get kids out of their head. And changing their state can make them laugh, can tell a joke. But I also talk out loud about this stuff with the kids so that they know what I'm doing. Like they know, when I'm trying to wrestle with them, they're like, she's trying to change my state. And that even becomes part of the dialogue. Like, you need to change your state. So that's one thing I do.
Two things come to mind with me. First, I think of, you mentioned watching you coach. I remember seeing 2 years ago at the State True TV, watching one of Megan's high jumpers, just like one of the most embarrassing disaster jumps ever. Like looked like this girl had never done it before. And
She's really good.
And
so
yeah,
it
she's
was-
really good.
Yeah.
So I'm on the fence watching this, and I see this girl just like a disaster attempt, and I look over at Megan, and Megan's busting a gut, and the girl comes over, and the two of them laugh about it, and then get back down to business. And I found that so fascinating because number one, there are so many coaches in the world who that kid makes that sort of like hilarious attempt, and they're terrified the second they hit the mat because they know they're going to look at their coach, and their coach is going to be like, "What was that?" And be frustrated. But or you do see coaches laughing at times, but it's coaches who they laugh because they are not really taking seriously what's happening here, and neither are the athletes. So it's rare that you would see something like that at a state truth team meet because usually the coaches laughing with the athletes have failed to establish really firm like trust and expectations with their athletes, and they're not at a state truth team meet anyway. So I found that experience so fascinating because that was an example of a student who, because of what Megan had done leading up to that moment, that student was not going to end up in her own head, even though that setting would have been one where it would have been really easy, like high stakes, for her to have that terrible jump and go, I don't know how to do this. But because both of how Megan responded in the moment and clearly because of how she had established expectations, both for herself and for the athlete leading up, she was able to respond in that way. And then the athlete's able to come back and have a real fresh start. The other thing I think about, I've become very fascinated in the last couple of years of, especially because our own numbers have grown substantially, and I'm constantly faced with the fact that there's only one of me, and there's only, we're really, really lucky we have a fairly large coaching staff for a school our size, but still nowhere near enough. How you can use a culture to communicate the messages that you would like to communicate yourself, but you cannot because you just can't be that present for everybody. And so one of the things that we've talked about with our kids, I'm the boys head coach. I coach the girls for sprints and relays as well, but I'm the boys head coach. And one of the things that they have heard extensively for the last couple of years is us wanting to build a culture where it is safe to fail. And we started highlighting that 2 years ago because 2 years ago I sat and went, I have a bunch of freshmen and sophomores who just finished 4th in state. They can do incredible things, and the thing that's going to stop them from doing that is perceived risk. You read about like workplace cultures and how it transforms things if the people who are involved in those cultures feel safe to make suggestions or even safe to provide healthy criticism of their superiors, as opposed to, and I've lived through some of these work environments where you're walking on eggshells, where you don't feel safe to criticize or suggest things or even take risks in your own teaching. And the same is true with the kids. Like you imagine the difference it makes if a kid feels like they want to make that move on the 5th lap of the 2 mile, but they know there's that chance that they're going to crash and burn in front of everybody. If they know that not only their coach is going to respond to that risk appropriately, that like even if they crash and burn, they're going to be thrilled that they took that risk, or at least work with them to talk about that risk, but that their teammates are also ready to be there. That changes everything. So we don't talk about failure so much as what happens after you fail, because everybody fails in track. Like none of us are under any presumption that our relays will go through the season without dropping batons, or that our distance runners will go the whole season and never once crash and burn at the moment where you expected them to go nuts, or that our throwers will not ever have a day where they're just off and every single throw is a foul. And so if we know that we're going to fail, then how do you set a culture where we're responding appropriately to that? So I think of, again, there are things that you can do for the student in the moment when they're in their head, but there are things that you can do in advance to help prevent that from happening and give them the language with which to get out of their head once that time comes. So
I love like what you said about the language piece. If you can create a common language, then when they're in their head, like you can say, like using his example, which I love, and is say, hey, we failed here. So like you've taken time to teach it with like, maybe it's a 20-minute thing for the first week of school, but then when you're in the moment, it's 2 words. Hey, we failed here. So like you don't have to re-explain or have this big long conversation with the kid that's in their head when you're trying to coach all these kids and you're saying, hey, we failed here. So you want to try to build what matters to you in your program pre-season or the first few weeks of the season so that when you're in the moment coaching, it's 2 words. It just reconnects them back to what you taught them. You know? So
Well, yeah, and the reality is that why are they in their head? It's almost certainly not because of track itself. This fall I read Jonathan Haidt's, I don't know if I'm saying his last name, The Anxious Generation. Anybody read that? Holy cow, like you look at the stats, especially with young women, the stats of mental health issues and how they have just skyrocketed since 2010, conveniently coinciding with the first iPhone, the first time we could carry the internet around in our pockets. It's staggering, and certainly it's impacting young men as well, but it is dramatically more impactful on our young women. And just from a cultural standpoint, we're all living in this environment right now where perfection is expected and your flaws are supposed to be hidden because what we're able to present to everybody is this manicured version of ourselves. And so in that environment then, kids show up and failure is seen as something that only they do. And which is why I think not only can you impact this through culture and language, but your own failures as a coach, you can lead the way too by never trying to hide that ever. My second year of coaching, I had a week where I was struggling with a lot of issues with some of the students and some injury stuff, and I came to realize that yes, these were issues that were a problem, but my response was not what the kids deserved to, and frankly, I felt kind of broken. And so I went, screw it, I'm gonna just do the right thing, even though I feel like I'm gonna lose this team. And so I stood up in front of them and I said, I have not been the coach that you deserve for the last week, and I apologize. Please forgive me. I'm gonna be better for you. And I thought for sure that these high schoolers, 23, I thought for sure these high schoolers were gonna take advantage of that vulnerability. And I'm convinced that was the moment that our program started to change. Because those kids, all of whom are so aware of their own failings and are terrified to look at them, looked at me and went, he screws up and he didn't burst into flame by admitting it. Maybe it's okay if I do that too. So your modeling and not being afraid to look at your own failures and being able to respond to them appropriately is going to be just huge for the kids as well.
which is massive advice in your first 3 years of coaching, because you're young, you're gonna feel like you're an imposter, or maybe feel like you have to show them that you know everything and you actually don't. So it's like this sense of a need to prove yourself. So I think that's huge, just to be vulnerable and to be authentic in what you're feeling, and they'll respect you more. I think 2 things from what you're saying is my girls now laugh about Megan Ageddon. When it's happened once in my career, I totally lost my crap, and it was actually this year, and it was the catalyst to us winning the state title for sure. But I don't like it. I actually don't like talking about it, and I was really angry because I felt like the girls and boys were asking us to lower our bar. It was too cold, the workout was too hard, and it was just building, and I lost it, and I walked out. I've never walked out, and I remember going to my captains the next day and saying, okay, what do I need to reaffirm? What do I need to restore? So what are the things I need to do? And they told me. They said, you need what needs to be restorative is you walked out on us. You need to talk about that. I said, done. And they're like, but you weren't wrong. So you need to keep your bar high, and you need to you need to affirm that. And so that next day, I faced my team and did the same thing. And I think it was the catalyst. And it took me like probably 3 weeks for that to settle inside of my body that I wasn't my best self. So I think it's like, in your first 3 years, there will be a sense that like, who is this person? Like, who is this coach? Do they know what they're doing? Like, there will be a sense like that. Just acknowledge it. It's fine. It's real. Don't pretend like it doesn't exist. But what they're gonna remember, like Gabby was in my first few years, like, and it's one of his college teammates. And I didn't know what I was doing, but if you were to ask her today, say, hey, I heard Megan talk. I bet she'll talk about our relationship and she'll talk nothing about high jump. And I was her high jump coach. And so just know that, like, they're gonna remember how you made them feel, how enthusiastic you were for them, and how much you saw their potential. So that's what matters most. You don't have to say, I don't know the answer to that. You can say, I don't know the answer to that. Be authentic to yourself, but if you show them that you care, and I know that sounds cheesy, but it's so real, that's all you really need to focus on. We've been talking, any questions? Like it's like a monologue right now.
No, this is great. I just have a couple overarching just to kind of help. Any pearls, tips, tricks with dealing with parents, relationships? I guess I don't have a great example, but just how to navigate those waters with
When parents think they know more than you do.
and kind of handling that. And then just curiosity, we have a really small squad from Doriota. And so coming in, Emily is the head coach, I'm an assistant coach, so this is all new for us, but handling some of our smaller squads and captains and your thoughts on captains and how to mentor your captains to be good leaders when maybe they're not, I don't know if that's the right way to frame that, but I think you know where I'm going.
Yes.
I wanna tackle that one and not the parent one. This one feels like the easier one. The parent
Yeah.
one is
Very big schools.
tougher.
Like, do you get a lot of parent stuff?
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like,
I've been in Egan since they opened the door, so I think there's a little bit of status there for, I'm in my 44th year of coaching, so. First step is to try and, is there a way that they can, even though it doesn't look right or feel right, is there a way that could be used to your advantage? Meaning, Booster Club president, something along those lines where we're all pulling in the same direction. The end of the story, I mean, try to tie them in and get them involved, but it would be honesty and just, I've had that happen where, it was even club coaching where it really, somebody who, the mom had a lot of success and just knows stuff, and so they're hanging over the railing and kind of decoding what I'm saying, or if they're whispering some fixes that I'm not whispering, that kind of thing. And you get to a point where that goes direct. You feel free to come down here and coach your daughter, but I'm doing this right now and I don't have time to, we got quite a bit going on here, so I just confront it and be respectful, so I don't think there's going to be any big damage from it, but it's really, for my mental health, I don't need any help. That's not helping. So why don't you just, enjoy the process, and a sunny day, let me do my thing, and then let's talk about how you could be helpful in other ways. And we have some needs areas, everybody has some, so just a way to maybe just let them know that you value them, but like, we're not doing this, and this is not helping at all. So we're not gonna, since that's the case, we're not gonna do it. We're gonna stop that.
I have I get ripped on for this, but so Brock Lesnar had a kid in our program and he was great, but there was a time where I program philosophies and policies, and we talk about it at the parent meeting on the front end, which is huge, by the way. You have it written and you talk about it. When they come and talk to you, you refer back to the paper because it's externalizing it. So it's not like you're wrong. It's according to this paper, this policy, this is what we anchor ourselves on. So if you can externalize, if we're in an argument, we can talk about that. That's easier than talking like this. You know what I mean? So having it written down and was good, but I stood toe to toe to Brock Lesnar about our culture and what we do, and it's like I have a twin brother who loves wrestling, and he's like tells everybody. So like my point in that is not to brag about going toe to toe with Brock Lesnar, but it is if you be very, very passionate about the culture that you want and what it means to coach and have your standards, and just talk passionately about those standards. Never once did I say to Brock Lesnar, you're wrong. I just talked really passionately about the program and what it means and expectations for practice and meets, and that was it. That's where the conversation ended. Like I just kept passionately talking about what we do in Alexandria, what it means to be on the girls track team. And again, it externalizes it, and then they see that this isn't about you having control and rules. This is that, hey, everybody has to be at practice every day, and if they miss, I'm not gonna yell at you, you're just gonna miss the next track meet. I guess it's just, let's handle this, not emotionally, but we're gonna stick to the policy. So rather than, I was getting hooked emotionally, but he didn't see that. He said, he saw passion, and he saw, I got this matters a lot to our program, I gotta stick with this, if that makes sense. Because he wasn't wrong, actually, with what he was asking, so that's another thing, like, it's not like I thought he was wrong, it's just, it wasn't us. I don't know.
I would say in 12, 13 years of teaching and coaching, I've had very, very few parent issues, but the parent issues I've had have been like the sort of stuff where you get therapy for 2 years afterwards. And that's not a joke, literally was in therapy for 2 years after a really bad parent situation. And I think if I were to try and sum up like, what have I learned about handling these, it is, it makes a huge difference when you try to treat other human beings as reasonable people, and also not all human beings are reasonable people. So like the number of situations that have been diffused because I get an angry email or somebody comes up and their parent teacher conference is a perfect example of this. They come up and they're fired up about something, and I pause. And the way that I've framed it to my wife before is I try to get it so that both of us are sitting on the same side of the table, where it's not me versus you. And this is very similar to what you said, but it's you and I both are wanting the same thing. In some ways, it's incorporating what you said. It's like, I'm gonna try and explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing, and keep in mind the objective here, which is ultimately what's best for your student. And 9.5 times out of 10, if I can take the time to treat them with dignity and treat them like they're a reasonable human being, like I want to involve them and help them understand what we're doing here, then not only does it diffuse it, but they end up being, like I said, on the same side of the table as me and all in. I think they probably would look at it differently than me. Some of them may come out of that conversation feeling like I came over to their side of the table. I don't care. Like I'm not here to win. I'm here to make sure we're moving in the same direction. So if they feel like they've converted me in some, I don't care. As long as the vision for my program stays and our philosophy stays. I think the places where I've gone wrong though are when I have encountered parents who are not reasonable, who are not rational, and no amount of conversations that you have there are going to make that change. And yet I struggle so much to believe, and I'm sure it's hubris, that I can't talk my way through this with this parent. Like I have to be able to say, if I say the right thing, then I can solve this. And the fact is that some of these parents are coming, it has nothing to do with you. Like the really bad situation that happened had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with my program. It had nothing to do with this person's kids even. It was an angry human being who had been deeply wounded, who was using this as a way to feel powerful. And in that situation, there's nothing I can do about that. And so that's where you have to lean on ADs. You have to lean on admin. You have to be able to go, I'm sorry, but this is not how we're going to do things. And hopefully you have admin that knows how to support you well in those circumstances. I did, thankfully. If I hadn't, I wouldn't be coaching anymore. I wouldn't, because those are really scary situations. So yeah, like I said, treat them like they're reasonable, incorporate them in the reason for your decisions, you know, recruit their thoughts on things, listen, but at the end of the day, you are responsible for the integrity of your program, and so stick to it.
Two things that you guys said that really stuck, like the best leaders I know, and this isn't my skill because like I get really just caught up in the kids, but the best leaders I know, our superintendent is one of them, you're one of them, has this art of pulling the opposition in. Like it is an art, it is a skill. I am not great at it. Part of it's because my plate is full and my brain is like, I can't. But like, I think that is an art, unless they are not reasonable. That's something that stood out.
The easy thing is to ignore it. You know, just have it go away. It's probably just a one-time deal. But it's ultimately a good thing that you know about this and are going to deal with it. Yes, it's probably going to be a bumpy road, but at least you know it's out there, and then you take care of the steps, the action steps that you need to bring the next person in. We're real fortunate at the school I'm at. The AD, she just retired, but she was my wife's best friend, and so we were, you know, you could rally the troops a little bit with this, but thank goodness that it wasn't just out there and I was the last one to know, you know, kind of a groundswell or something. And I don't know, it's no fun, but at least you know kind of what's happening out there, so you can figure out some stuff.
And then with bringing the ADN piece, like the second part of the Brock Lesnar story is when I stood up to him the first day, I was like doing like high kicks, like yeah. And then he found my cell phone and called me at 9 p.m. the next day, and then I went straight to my AD. And I was like all empowered and it felt great. Now I'm a little scared. Can you help me? And so I think like if you're a head coach, that next layer is your AD. And a lot of times I'd say, hey, I had an interaction with a kid or a parent. It didn't feel great. I don't know if it's coming your way, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. So even if you're new, I did that all the time in my first 3 years, and I think it built the respect and rapport I have now. It didn't I was not incompetent in their eyes, because a lot of the times the parent didn't end up with him, but he was like, thank you for that. If I have your back, thanks for the context. And he did. And then if you're an assistant coach, your person is your head coach. Don't go to your AD, go to your head coach and let them know. Be like, I had this interaction with this kid or this parent, it didn't feel right, this is how I handled it. Coach me on if I should do it better, but if there's nothing I can do, I just at least wanted you to have your eyes open. So I think that's important. And then the final thing to go back to your question, you've heard it, you heard all of us talk about it. It's cool that we have a head coach and assistant coach in the same program here, because you have an opportunity to build your vision of your culture together, and that is your anchor. So like, I don't know if it's coffee or a glass of wine or a beer or whatever, but it's like, or I get together and have a brainstorm. Maybe you already have, like, who are you as a program? What do you want to be? And then the rules all come from that. What does it mean to be a girls Alexandria track and field athlete? We're courageous. We compete when the stakes are higher. We do better. Like, that's who we are. Like those types of things. We have high expectations. We expect that you're at practice every day. So things like that are who you are. That's what because it has anchored me in so many ways. And I revisit it, and I'm not joking. I'm in my 15th year. I revisit it every year. Who am I as a coach? What does our program get? Like, what does it mean to be in our program? And then I meet with our captains. I will right after this clinic. It's like now I meet with my captains, and we talk about not only who we are, but who they want us to be their senior year.
I think of something I did, especially in my first few years, is if I got an email from a parent or something, and especially when you're a new coach, and especially when you're a young new coach or a young new teacher, the parent feels like they, more than with a veteran teacher, that they can step in and say, we're doing this. And it's worth noting, just anecdotally, that goes, I've seen that either go goes away way later with female teachers and coaches, or it does not go away at all. The sense that parents have that they can step in and they, like, I have power here. So one of the things I did early in my career was, and my AD and my principal both knew that this is what I was doing when I looped them in. If I got an upset email from a parent about whatever, I would, in my reply, include the AD or principal, and at the end of my response, say, it seemed, something along the lines of, this seems to be something that you're very concerned about. So I encourage you to reach out to my AD or reach out to my principal, set up a time to talk with them so we can get to the bottom of this. As if to take away the next move that they might hold over my head, which is, oh, I'm gonna go to the principal or the AD and talk to them. Well, no, I would love for you to do that, because that depends on you being confident that your AD and principal have your back, which is unfortunately not the case all the time. But if you have that, you can pull them in right off the bat, so that, and what I've found is that sometimes bringing in this other person makes the parent go, oh, I'm 100% overreacting on this. Like, when it was just me sending a therapeutic email to the parent, to the coach, that was fine. But now that this is blown up a little bit, I realize that I'm overreacting completely. Almost every time the parent would go, no, that sounds just fine, we're good. So that's another move, and also, especially when you're a young new coach, that's an opportunity for you to demonstrate to your AD that you know what you're doing here, that you can handle yourself. So
It's funny that you mentioned that too, because countless times I've got an email and I was not in the right place. I'm going, what? And then I just to figure the trick out enough to just put it away for a little bit, go back and look at the email, and it didn't land the way it did the first time, just because I'm in a little different spot too. So
Let it settle a little bit.
and it just read differently.
Yeah.
yeah, you and I were talking about that in an email that we got maybe a month ago. Like, we read it, and then we had, this is not something I used to do. I used to want to sit down and deal with things right away, and it's so good to just, one, they don't expect you to respond in 2 minutes, and two, like, you need to give yourself some space to process this. So yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Now, your other question was leadership.
The one we wanted to talk
Yeah,
about.
leadership, kids.
After 15 minutes on parents.
The boys head coach, he helped me see that. So our process for selecting captains is we do a team vote, and that decides it. And so the kids select captains, coaches, we look at it and we talk about it, we have a say, but in essence, coaches kind of have one vote too. Like, we really look at, because what he taught me is a leader is a person that kids follow, doesn't mean that it's in a good way or a bad way. Like, so that if they select their leader, depending on the year, you might have a job to do, you might have to teach them how to lead. And I do think, at least from my anecdotal experience in Alexandria, since COVID, when we were trapped, those freshmen that didn't get to see the seniors leading lost an opportunity to look up and be like, oh, this is how we lead. And so when they became leaders, they didn't know. They were good kids, but they just didn't know how to call a teammate out or to lift up see the person that needs you to pull them in. Like, they just didn't see the things or know how to do the things. And there was some people were like, they just don't know how to lead. They're just, this group is different. And all of a sudden we realized they haven't been taught. They haven't seen it. It hasn't been modeled to them. And so, depending on the group of seniors I have, sometimes there's a lot to teach you. Like, it's a lot of, and a lot of times when I have my senior meeting, I'll have a captain meeting and then I'll have a senior meeting. When I have a senior meeting, I'll say, like, we'll envision what does the culture mean, and we'll build it together. We'll make our expectations. But then as a coach, I'll say, okay, ultimately, if we have a healthy culture, you guys are reinforcing this culture. You're calling each other out in a healthy way, or you're picking each other up. And if we have a fully healthy culture, we can as coaches sit back and watch the magic happen. However, I am the accountability person. I am the head coach. So if there's something that you feel like you can't handle or you feel like is too big, you have lots of options. You can try it yourself. You can come to me and say, Coach, can you coach me on how to handle this? Or you can say, can you take this one? And I will take it. Like, I will absolutely have those tough conversations, especially when it comes to culture. That is not hard for me to say that's not who we are. And so I give them choices. Autonomy is huge for me. Like I give my seniors choices on, you can handle it this way on your own, and this is how. You can pull me in and I'll coach you. I'll be like your consultant, or I will take it. And like very rarely now do they have me take things. Lots of times they'll set up a meeting and have me coach them on how. And that's building leadership. So that's been fun.
Do you have the why to make that?
No, we just do the team vote. And then I'll probably meet with just the captains 4 or 5 times before the season, and the seniors once.
We needed to change the plan. We had done that way forever, and then it's a pretty good sized team. And there's certain political things that are just not going, that are gonna happen. We had a major blowout with, there was the third, you know, generally the event kids are gonna pick their favorites within the group, but there was a senior, very deserving, but she was the 3rd most popular distance runner. And there's just not enough votes in the distance group to supply her, because we switched it to just, you get 1 vote. And other years I've done 2 votes and picked 2 or something like that. That was a major blowout, so it's still not fixed. I mean, parents and kid are still angry, and she's probably gonna be a senior next year in college. But what we ended up doing was having an application process, and then we posted those online, and it was very few hard-hitting questions, but it was like, who's a good leader in your mind, or where was a situation where you stepped in and led, and just some things like that, a little bit where they have to process and show their stuff without writing a well-constructed AI created, beautiful summary of themselves anyway, but we're just kind of, we need to do that, and then if you don't apply, your name's not on the ballot, so.
It is a challenge to, like, if you have a huge sprint crew and you have 4 throwers, like that. So we try to get representation in every event group, and so that kind of makes but they can vote across event groups. I mean, so I don't think our system is perfect either. It's kind of hard to find that perfect system, but it's been working. So far been working.
Do you guys have set numbers? Like, is it like we're only gonna do X number, or is it more just like year by year based on the?
I have 80 girls on the team, maybe 70 boys, so it's pretty big. And I've had anywhere between 4 girl captains and 6 girl captains. It kind of depends on the votes and the uniqueness of the group and the team.
Where the natural break is in the voting too, somewhat. And then you have no chance if you're not really nice to the freshmen and the JV kids. I mean, you can't. We sort of pushed that out in different ways early, but this mixing up as a team and just get to know people, it's extremely valuable if you're, say, going to be, interested in being a captain later in the season, because that's how you get it done, because they got to vote too, just like everybody.
I can't remember who we stole this from. It's stolen for sure. But on the day of voting, there's a sheet that we created. We tailored it to us, and it says qualities of a captain, a cardinal captain, a track captain. And then we had all of the next year's seniors on a sheet of paper, so they had all the names. And we said, just write initials of the people who fit these lines. And so it would be like, isn't afraid to step up, when there's a challenge, or may not have a loud voice, but leads by example. So we had all of these statements, and they would put teammates' initials on it, and then we would say, maybe your vote should be the one who has the most initials. Think about what our team needs next year. Maybe it needs a quiet leader that is just a grinder. So we talk about different leadership styles and how they're valuable. And so that's a nice setup to get their brains ready, because otherwise they're going to be like, Aaron, what you gonna do? You're the captain. Right next to it. So it's like, and I don't let them talk. I spread them out all over and just say, I need you to get in the headspace. This is an important vote. Let's look at what it means to be a leader and put the initiative. So that helps a little bit.
This is going to be a perfect example of how there's more than one way to skin the cat. We don't have any captains in our program. We got rid of those. That was one of those things where my first year of coaching, I went, this might rock the boat, and so I'm not going to do this now, and I'm going to wait 5-6 years, and then we're going to do this. So we got rid of coaches, I think maybe 2018. Or not coaches. We still have coaches, thank goodness. The kids just coach themselves. No, we got rid of captains, and there was a couple reasons for this. Part of it is I had, when I was in high school, my coach was in the process of trying a bunch of different ways to try and solve this. He had a number of years in a row where the people who had been selected captains by team vote, he had become just very disillusioned with that process because the people that were getting voted in were getting voted for reasons that were maybe the right reasons were there initially, but they were not ultimately the leaders that he needed. He went through an application process and that didn't work either. And so when I was a senior, was his first year of trying what it looks like to recognize leadership instead of assign leadership. And so that was on my mind when I first got started coaching. The idea that a couple things. One, the fear that if I say you three are captains, then the people who don't have that C will go, well, my job isn't to be a leader then, which isn't true. And of course, we never had this, but the fear that you give that captaincy to somebody who then is a damaging person to your program. And I also became very cognizant of the fact that there are certain leadership styles that I am drawn to, that I recognize. And they are the ones that model my own leadership styles, but that is not the only way to lead. And just about the time that we ditched captains, we had a couple examples that became very clear to me because of the way the kids recognized them, of athletes who were leading in ways that were absolutely not the way that I would lead, and yet it was effective because it was an expression of who they were. So I came to realize that being the head boys coach, every single person is telling my boys to be leaders. They don't have a clue what that means, and usually they think that means I need to be some sort of charismatic, like invitation-laden like person, or they think leadership is supporting your teammates, coming to practice every day, working hard. That's not leadership. That is being a teammate. That's baseline stuff. So if I were to list off the single most genius thing that I have ever done as a coach, it's this right here. After the 2020 season, with all of this and with our expanding team and feeling like I don't want distance sprints and throws, I want one team, not three teams. I started doing what we call morning practice. So 2 weeks before the season starts, all the junior and senior boys get an email from me inviting them to the weekly morning practice, which is Wednesday or Thursdays. We start school at 8:10, so it starts at 7:30 in my room. I bring them coffee. They are not required to come. It is whoever wants to come in to morning practice, come on in. And they bring the breakfast. Usually they trade off, like somebody's bringing snacks. And what we do there is I teach them leadership. We talk about culture building. We talk about the very things we were talking about earlier about creating a risk-free environment. We talk about that. And as the season goes on, then we start talking. Like we will sit and put the list of junior high kids up on the board, and I will tell me about these guys. Like our whole goal is we want to make sure that their experience in this first year or second year is one that they want to come back to. And so it is a weekly check-in where all of us are looking at them and going, okay, are these kids coming back? Can we say with confidence they are coming back? And if we can't, then we know what our job is for the week. So that has been a million times more fruitful than I thought it would, because it's an opportunity for me to teach them leadership and do it real time in responding to situations that are on the team. And as our numbers have grown, again, I'm equipping them to do what I would do if I was in those situations, but I can't because I'm only one coach. And again, I don't require anybody to come in. So there's some juniors and seniors who probably would have, certainly would have received captaincy votes because they were like the standout athlete. The majority of my junior senior boys come, but if you don't come, that's fine. I'm going to work with the kids that are there, and what I've found is there are kids who would not have been given that captaincy position because of whatever, who are empowered to be certain types of leaders because of that. So that you don't need to necessarily ditch captaincy to have something like that. But I've just found that to be the most magnificent thing. And I get extremely close with my junior and senior boys as a result. I can tell you that our incoming juniors they've heard about this, they're excited about this. I also then, everybody who's involved in morning practice, like I stopped sending the email after a certain point in the season. Like if you're coming, then you're coming. And then at the end of the season, all of those boys get invited over to my house for supper. And we sit and have what's called the State of the Union, which is we sit in my backyard, chairs, they eat meal, and then I look at the sprinters and I go, where is the sprinting crew at? Like we're at the end of this season. Where are they at? Like what do we need to watch for next year? Where are the throws? Where are we as a team? What do we need to work on for next year? So even there, like trying to involve them, it's not making them coaches, but it's investing them in this program in a way that they take ownership. They are as responsible for this culture as I am. So if you're talking a cross country team, I think there's a lot of really unique ways that because that is a smaller set of kids, really unique ways that you can equip those kids really well and pay close attention to the immediate results of that too. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So you being the boys head coach and doing it this way, are the girls doing the same? Are they modeling that, or are they different?
Yeah, so I will confess that I was the girls and boys head coach for the first few years in St. Charles, and then we grew, and that became something that was untenable, and thankfully we had a school board who allowed us to get a girls head coach as well. And I had wanted to do this for a number of years, but waited because our girls head coach was not in a position to do something like this as well. And we had some turnover in that position, and finally just went, I can't wait to do what needs to be done for my boys, because we don't have somebody who's willing or able to do it for the girls. We now have I think Russ Barclay is one of the greatest coaches in the whole freaking state running our girls program, and that's evidenced by, we had 29 girls out 2 years ago, and last year we had 72, and it's the first time in St. Charles history we've ever had more girls out for track than boys. And he does something similar, but it's not that same setup. It's less regular, and I think that's perfect. Like he is the one who has the sense of that program and what those girls need, and also in the same way that I expect from my boys, your leadership should be a reflection of who you are. That the best leader is just somebody who's comfortable in who they are, not somebody who's talking when they're not really a talker, or giving instructions when they're not an instructor, but being who you truly are. It would make sense then that my morning practice is going to look different from Russ Barclay's morning practice, whatever that is. But he does have a similar mechanism in place, and then our end of season leadership awards do match. So, like I said, we recognize leadership. At the end of the season, we have a top scorer, most improved, most dedicated, but there's a leadership award that gets voted on. It's a totally different plaque. We tell kids that it's not something that needs to be given every single year. It's only given to leaders who go above and beyond normal expectations of leadership. And kids are required to give a rationale if they vote for somebody. They can't just say a name, they have to explain why this person deserves this. And so the girls and boys program both have those. And what we found is that leadership award is getting, we may have a decision that we need to make going forward, because the reality is the byproduct of this morning practice is, pick a kid who doesn't deserve that. The work that they've been doing these last couple of years has been so incredible that I'm getting to the end of the season and going, well, especially when I read through some of these kids' testimonies, it's like, oh, a lot of kids deserve that. So in that regard, we are mirrored.
What about other questions?
I have one. So we have a couple athletes that overtrain, like that, because we're cross-country coaches, but we have a couple that do extra sports during the cross-country season. And then we have one that runs more miles than what we run at practice. Like she goes and runs every morning. Like how do you deal with those kinds of situations where their parents are supporting their overtraining broach that subject, because even our trainer hates it, and our trainer has said things, but they don't listen, so.
Super frustrating.
Yeah,
And-
first year problem.
Ultimately, we may not win that one. I mean, just conversations about scholarships and it's soccer basically, you know, and where we are and the need to play in the winter and go to all these elite things and they like that better than track or they need to do it, they think stuff like that, but my answer sounds a little bit like the last one was that hate it, but at least there's an open conversation and you know it's there and you can work with it because how you counter it is going to be restoration and that's the only solution. One thing I put in with our parent kickoff meeting at the beginning is I'm just kind of blunt and I'd like to just talk to the dads right now. And then I said, just from a sprint, jump, hurdle standpoint, here's the rhythm we're on, you know, and it's usually kind of metabolic on Mondays and Tuesdays are kind of, and then restoration, and then I think they like to know that there's a plan, but the point is that, and then at the end of the week, I'm kind of assuming that they're coming back somewhat rested, and then I just call it out that if they're away and the weather was terrible and they had to play 3 soccer games in 2 days or 3 in 1 day or whatever, with all that, it's a hard conversation to have, but that's something a guy should know because I'm expecting him to be fresh coming back from Monday for a workout maybe. And then it's awkward, but it sure is good to know it. And then we've got some things, maybe it's bike or maybe, you know, but truthfully, that's the last thing. Understanding that where they are in Texas playing soccer is a bigger deal than track. It kills me to say that, but we may well be the best, you know, the most important thing for that kid, the right thing is the rest. And so we're gonna do the right thing, and we're the easiest to disappoint, the easiest to get along with, and you know, so we're usually the ones that are victimized the most by this, but I think also it gains some status down the line that we do care. We care about this person. And maybe the soccer coach with the British accent, they get, you know, I mean, their practice has changed in regard on how they played in the weekend before or something, but that, you know, that might run its course and it's a big deal now, but it may not be, but it's important. So in the long haul, we may win some battles for being caring that way, but I don't know. We've just called it out and dealt with it. It's when I've addressed this piece to the dads in the group, you know, an awful lot of moms are kind of giving them the elbow. So anyway, because there's that temptation to just, yeah, I know some stuff. You know, I'm gonna add some in there. You know.
I agree with Rob. Like it. So typically, when you have overtraining or you have people running more miles, it's anxiety-based. Either anxiety-based of the kid or anxiety-based of the parent. And so the extent to how anxiety-based it does sometimes govern your ability to change it, right? So, and I don't mean you're powerless ever, but part of what I'm about to say is to give yourself grace and know what you can and can't control, like what Eric talked about earlier. And so, and knowing that art form of like, when do I say it's because you're exhausted, or it's because it was the highest volume week of training for us this week and you're still running? How do you say that at the right time so you're not like taking the knife and twisting it when they have a poor race all the time, but you're also just twisting it a little because it's got to be uncomfortable for them to actually get it. And so when I have a situation like that, I will just say, I know I sound like a broken record. And I know you're probably sick of me saying this, but I care about you and your overtraining. Like I do talk science in that case. And sometimes when I'm talking the science, I know that it doesn't really matter. Like, so as a new coach, what I'm trying to say is you don't need to know the science, but I will talk about it sometimes. Maybe that they'll be more comfortable that I have an overarching plan from start to finish. And there are moments where we need to rest, and there's other moments where I'm gonna stretch them as far as I possibly can with the volume and the intensities that I'm giving them. So I'll talk the science with the kids or the parents so that they know that I have a big plan and how when they interfere with that plan, it's gonna impact when they peak. You know, like I have to map every foot contact, you know, but then ultimately in my head, I'm like, how strong is it? How strong is the anxiety? And I'm gonna keep approaching it. I'm never gonna give up, but maybe it's gonna be 20 years down the line where they're like, holy crap, coach cared about me more than just a PR. And so there are kids that I've been in the fight and haven't won that battle. But I think they think about me later like, she cared more about me. You know, and I'm good at that. Like I'm good with not fixing it, and they know that I cared about them. You know, if that makes sense. So it's letting go. Like sometimes it is not choosing to give up, but choosing to let go of the outcome and live with your values and what matters to you passionately for that kid in that moment as much as you can. Does that make sense? I've had times where I've called the parent informally and said, I need this isn't working. Like what do you need from me to help you step back? So I've also addressed it that way too. Like, what do you need? I need you to step back.
I struggle with situations like this a lot because I'm bad at differentiating between what I can control and can't control. And very often I fall into the trap of thinking I can control the policies of this program and I can control my own awareness of the science, the truth. Therefore I should be able to control your reception of that truth. I have tried different methods, even asking the kids, like, just show me the workouts that you're doing at soccer when you leave me so that I can work with that. And that just pisses me off because then they hand me this dumb crap where the coach is just making them tired to be tired. There's not a single, like it's clear there's not a single ounce of training involved. It's just, if I made you puke and you're sore the next day, you must be a better athlete. And so what I've found is that, and I'm still getting better at this, but I try to be as consistent as possible, that the kids know how I feel about it, and I want to present this in a way that is not, client doesn't like what you're doing. I'm just telling you the science, and if you, or if your parents more commonly, think that you are a scientific anomaly, then fine. And then, like, okay, I can't control that. Then I wait for you to graduate and I make sure that the consistent messaging is being heard by the rest of the team. One of the things that's been fascinating is in all the years I've been coaching, I've only once had a student who was doing soccer consistently outside of practice who was healthy at the end of the season. Every single other one injured. And if I'm consistent with my messaging on the kids always know that they're doing this stuff just as much as me. If I'm consistent with my messaging constantly on like a weekly basis, this is what we did this week. You need to rest. Here's how science works. Here's how your muscles work. You need to rest. And they know that so-and-so is leaving practice and doing this other thing. It is an I told you so that I don't need to say. Only once have we had a kid, like I said, make it through the season uninjured, and the following season completely crap the bed at the end of the season for that very reason. And I wish that he had, I never want to wish that he had gotten injured, but his ability to thwart the science that one year, you can tell that changed the way the kids looked at it too. So always never be afraid to tell the truth to the parents. It's especially difficult if you feel like you're not supported by other coaches. I have not felt that the other coaches in our district have always been willing to say those things, and in some ways, I get that because you feel more pressure to keep up with the Joneses than I do. Okay, if you are a new coach running the soccer program, running the basketball program, and everybody else is saying you have to do AAU basketball, and you can do it in that and track, and there's no downside to that. It's really hard for you to take that stand and go, we're not going to do that, because that looks like you're not doing anything. But obviously it makes it harder for you if you're the only one standing up and going, no, actually scientifically this is going to break you. So tell them the truth, and if they continue to do what they're doing, then, like you said, let go.
Yes.
And be ready to receive them back if at some point they're like, you know what, I think I might be overtraining. That's, I think, I think you're probably right. So let's talk about how we can solve that.
So if you think of science, so show them what you know, consistency, say the same messages over and over and over again, care, show them care, perspective, know when to let go, and then the last one is, what we haven't talked about, is trust. And so a lot of times I'll say to the girls, like just like one-on-one, this is a one-on-one conversation. I get that you have a lot of anxiety about this, and I see where it's coming from, but to me it feels like a lack of trust. And I need you to trust me. And so it's just like a little extra, like, I care about you and I need you to trust me, but I know that you trust me. I know this is anxiety based, but right now for me, that's how it feels, and I need you to trust me. So that's just like another, if you have that relationship, that really sometimes works. Because then when they do more in their brain, it's a violation of trust. It's not a, I need more. And that's a different feeling for a kid to have. You know?
Thank
So-
you.
So guys, it is 9:02, and so, if there's any last minute questions, or wrap it up, or?
We don't disappear after,
We love
we
this
kind of
session.
disappear, but
It's
like,
one of our favorites.
there's a reason, there's a reason why all three of us are involved in the new mentor program. Like, we had coaches help us, and so like, please reach out if you have questions. And like I will simply say, if you go on our association website, the mentor page has a whole list of coaches, along with, if you're looking for somebody who specifically has wisdom on small school strategy or big school strategy or high jump, or there's a whole list of coaches there where you can identify exactly what you may be looking for. Minnesota is the best place for track and field coaches, because the people who have accomplished so much, or just the legends, don't walk like they're legends, and for some reason sit and talk to people like me and
That's so
want to
true.
talk to people like me.
That's so
And
true.
so they are all eager and excited to hear from young coaches and help them. So even when you get into the thick of the season, we're all busy and dying. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
And if you send an email to one of us and we're all busy and dying and it isn't replied, just do it again. Say, hey, just bring us to the top of your inbox. I love when people do that for me. So that would be great.
I'll reply immediately, because I would rather reply to your email than to the other stuff that I've got to get.
How many times you said, I'm just gonna bring this up here
Yeah,
next
yeah,
to you, little Megan,
yeah,
because
yes, it's
I'm
true.
sure it's buried. Yeah.
Yes, it's true. So,
Because Megan does that if we don't.
Oh.
If
Yes.
we don't. She nudges.
We nudge each other. We are a great team. We don't let each other fail.
thank you for coming this morning. Please enjoy the rest of the clinic.